Corey.
So how we doing? Today is June 27th.
Yeah, Friday, and we are at a Powers. Couples Power Weekend.
Power couples get a weekend getaway.
Yeah. I don't know if y'all heard Elizabeth.
Power
but
couples get a weekend getaway?
We try not to call it a couples retreat because it's really not a couples retreat. It's a power weekend where we empower each other, encourage each other.
I like that. I like the empowerment.
And we stir each other in the things of God, and places maybe we were dry, we become not dry anymore. Places that we don't have any, we just need God. He just comes in.
We're upside down.
Dadgummit.
Just turn it upside down. Just rotate the whole phone.
Okay, wait a minute. We have a little
No,
bit
you
of...
keep going. Now, how's that look? Are we still upside down? Well, you got to wait till it gets to her.
Oh.
Go the other way. Yeah.
Okay.
Man. No. Women.
You can see I can do it crooked. Corey has to have everything just straight. Okay, we'll fix it. Okay.
All right, you fix it.
All right.
See, now we were straight.
We love live.
Okay, here we go.
Get ready. We're gonna rotate again.
You know, I can't even get the thing apart.
I don't know who's worse.
He doesn't realize he's almost doing this with his sister-in-law.
How are we now? See, now we're upside. I see.
Okay, wait a minute.
Okay, just you have to wait.
It's just a little bit of technical difficulty.
Turn it sideways one more time.
You'll just have to shake it.
Huh?
You'll just have to feel the motion and turn it up. There you go. Like that. Should fix it. There we go.
We're gonna see. How many chiefs can we have with no Indians?
Oh, here we go again. Almost did it again.
See, I told you. Not that I'm telling you, but I'm telling you so. But just rotate.
Okay,
Rotate
listen.
it 90 degrees.
How about if he fixes it?
Well, you rotate it 90 degrees, get it to stick, and you'll be okay. Now
I'm taking pictures. Okay, what if we...
Because if we back out of...
this is the Keystone Cops.
If we
and
back out of... Remember, if we back out of lyrics that we lose.
she's not backing out. She was going to change settings.
Yeah, I'm not going to back out. I'm just going to change settings, but I don't... Evidently.
Now, can you make that stick? I don't know, Elizabeth. How do you tighten it? What?
Right here.
It's not letting me catch any settings. I want to take a picture of it again.
Okay, let's see for a second. I bet there's some people online just loving this. This is going to be on what's it?
America's Funny Home Videos.
Yeah.
Oh, look
Other
at
than
there.
we're in
Okay,
Virginia,
is it going to stay?
Well, if it stays, it's going to
See,
stay.
so this is technical difficulty, and it's only for people like Corey. Because it doesn't bother me to be upside down, but it would bother him.
No, actually, I'm a pilot. I can fly upside down. It don't
Oh,
matter.
okay, never mind about that. He
But-
could. Okay, let's get back.
Oh, mercy.
Oh, I'm so sorry, everybody. I hope we didn't make you dizzy.
But it's comical because, we look here and we have people behind us for a change. But I mean, we have all these empty tables. And with these empty tables, we're sitting here, quote, live. And all the people, the peanut gallery is on the other side. So it's, we're going to have fun today because we're going to pick on Elizabeth all day.
Yes, I think we are.
So anybody who doesn't know who we are, I just want to clarify that Elizabeth, right? This is Dream Big Today.
This is Dream Big Today.
And Elizabeth is my sister-in-law. Now, she will tell everybody that, she's the favorite sister-in-law. So we'll see how this gets going. So anyway, we're back to June 27th, right, today? Is that still today?
Yeah, and it's Friday morning, and we're
Okay.
at Lake Thunderbird at the Sullivan Retreat. It's an amazing retreat center.
Yep. And we'd have a beautiful view the other way toward the lake. So maybe tomorrow's Bible study they can, Tom's modeling that, the view is him. No, that's the lake behind Tom. But anyway, we're in a beautiful location,
Yes.
and we're going to be here for a couple of days. But for today's Bible study, it's going to be kind of unique. Leslie and I are going to tag team a little bit, but we're going to start in 2 Kings, right?
Yeah.
2 Kings 10. And to kind of summarize, we're at a part in the Bible where when I was younger, I'd get a little confused at times because you have Israel and you have Jordan, or Judah, and the two are kind of separate. And so there's these things going on one side, and the other side is trying to, well, who's who and where are they doing, and trying to keep it straight. So I used to get a piece of paper and actually draw a line. Okay, this is happening in Israel while this is happening in Judah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at with today as we start off, because on the Israel side, it starts off with Jehu dies, right? And was buried in Samaria. And then his son Jehoahaz became the next king of Israel. So that's on the Israel side. But this is just like a normal story when Elizabeth starts telling a story, and then she's like, oh, but wait. Now let's back up, and let me tell you something that happened before that ever happened, right? So if we back up, Athaliah, the mother of King Ahaziah, is ruling over Judah after killing most of her royal family, right? Because when her son dies, she basically seizes control, and she winds up killing, think of this, she killed her own family, with the exception of her grandson who was hidden away. So imagine this as a grandmother, that you would potentially kill your own grandson because you want to basically be the queen.
It just blows my mind. And
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so there had to be a disconnect from a relationship side to even be able to conceive of that.
Yeah, I know. I can't even bring. You know, she was the granddaughter of Ahab, and I didn't even. I'm thinking that's where the root of it, the evil came from. The grandmother Ahab.
But luckily, her grandson is hidden away as a baby, really, and he was hidden for 6 years in the temple, right?
Do you think that she knew that he was? She didn't know that
She,
he was
well,
hid away.
you know, Carrie was asking about. My wife was asking about that last night. That, you know, how did she not? She had to be looking for him. You know, she had to be looking for him because she's trying to kill all of them.
Yeah.
And she either presumed that, you know, he was hidden away, or she presumed that he was dead already.
Right.
But you know, it doesn't talk about her hunting for him. But the bottom line is, she didn't want anybody else in the family that could contest her being in leadership. Is
Right.
the bottom line.
Right. I think that she trusted whoever she put in charge of killing them. I bet you she didn't go out there and verify anything. So I just don't think that she knew about it. Whether it matters any way or the other,
Yeah.
but I don't
It's
think
possible,
she knew.
but I think we get to the point that in the 7th year, Jehoiada is how you say his name, the priest. He organizes the military commanders, the mercenaries, and the palace guards, and to protect Joash, the grandson, right? And now they're going to disclose that they have him, and basically they conduct a coronation. And in doing that coronation, they make him the king of Judah, but they do it publicly. And again, there's a process that they follow. And he was very methodical about following that process that validates that this is the new king of Judah.
Yeah.
And even though he was 7 years old, right?
That just blows my mind. I wouldn't want to put any 7-year-old in charge of a kingdom. And you can clearly say it was all about their family being ruling. That child, I don't believe, was ruling. I mean, I know that
Well, he wasn't,
was.
and I think
it's
you got to think
like-
about it from this perspective. I think Jehoiada, the priest, that's exactly why he put him in at 7. Now, 7 is a bit young, I would say, but it's because the 7-year-old's going to be very dependent on that priest
Yeah.
for guidance.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
can still mold
yeah.
and influence him, and that allowed the priest to do exactly what he wanted to do, was religious reform, right? And so let's jump to verse 17. Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people. Now, the Lord and the king and the people, and the king is 7 years old, right? But that they would be the Lord's people. He also made a covenant between the king and the people, and all the people of the land went over to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They demolished the altars and smashed the idols into pieces, and they killed Madden, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars, right?
Yeah.
And again, all this happened when Joash was 7 years old.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but it allowed that reform.
Yes.
If Joash was old enough to think, you know, think about it like a 12-year-old boy. He thinks he's smart enough, you know, smarter than dad. He would potentially want to do it his way,
Oh, yeah.
not realizing.
Exactly. So the 7-year-old might have been the correct process that way.
And he receives it. Joash,
Yeah.
you know, he continues. In fact, he takes on that to the point that now he actually starts providing guidance to the priests. That wait a
Yeah,
minute, why is the
seen that.
temple? Why is the temple in such shambles? Why
Yeah.
aren't we fixing the temple? And so that's good. I take that process. He absorbed and reflected that same positive process as he grew older. And he straightened out the priests' mismanagement, in my mind, of the temple, right?
Yeah, it kind of reminds you, to raise your children the way they should go, and they won't depart from it. Of course, back then, the maturity of children were much more mature than what they are to these days.
Well, obviously, yeah, they were thrown into it.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
like this boy was. But he wound up really being a good king.
Yeah,
Of course, unfortunately, he comes to a bad demise quickly. It's once again, but that's how it was. And so we're going back and forth between Israel and Judah, and at times it's like, well, Jehu is going to be this better king on the Israel side, and then it's like, well, no, Joaz is a better king on the Judah side. And so it seems like the good king kind of alters back and forth between good and bad.
yeah.
So
Well, Corey, I'm going to admit to you, and to all of whoever's watching this whole chapter was like, I can't even pronounce anybody's name. Corey's doing so awesome. I mean, I just felt like in a whirlwind after I got through reading it that, oh no, Corey's going to have to do all the talking because I can't even figure this out. And then I said this morning, I said, go, and what can I relate this to today? And I think about in the scriptures in John 14 came up about, he said, I'm not going to leave you as an orphan, but I'm going to bring you the Holy Spirit. Where we are adopted into him, that orphan mindset. So in the Old Testament, they had the mindset of orphans. So they were always trying to gain position. That's the reason why they had to kill everybody off. Yes. And if we really think about it, sometimes we do the same thing. We self-promote, because we don't understand that we're sons, we're heirs, that we don't have to self-promote, we don't have to self-protect, we don't have to do all those things. That's exactly what all they did. It was always self-promotion, self-protection. The way they self-protected, they killed everybody so that someone wouldn't ever overpower them. And me and Matt was talking about someone this morning. It's like, well, he doesn't show us anything on this particular business thing because he wants to be the one that knows it all. Have you ever worked with someone like that where they so self-protect their position that they won't train someone up to walk side by side with them in a community, so they're so threatened because of that orphan mindset? So that's what I kind of thought about in these scriptures today. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this seems like such an extreme, but we do the same thing, but not in such an extreme.
100%. And exactly what you're talking about. So I work a lot with businesses, and it's one of the things I coach people up is a lot of people run their business, I say, a car wreck away from catastrophe.
Yeah. Because
when I'm the guy that runs the business and the business is all about me and nothing can be done without my decision making at the top of it, then guess what? One car wreck and I'm in the hospital for 6 weeks and everything's going to die because nobody can operate without me.
Exactly.
I set myself up for failure that way.
Yeah.
So it's all about promoting a team to the point that the system will run, and the good kings, that's what they have. Yeah. Their system will run without them in their absence.
Absolutely. And that's where you learn to flow from each other and not threatened by each other because you understand who you are. You know your call. You know where you're at. But those that are not, they're always trying to gain an extra foothold or a promotion. And if we make our job about just us, I just believe that every promotion that we do is going to be self-promotion.
Well, there's another aspect to it too. I think it's the perception that, if I get this, it's mine, and I'm going to hold it and keep it for some period of time, like it's permanent. When we step back and realize that everything in our lives is going to be temporary.
Yes.
In this realm, everything's temporary.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter because in a few days this isn't going to matter anymore.
That's right.
It's going to those resources or whatever are beyond me, and the people that can separate and step into that mode, they can realize, well, it's better to keep this thing perpetual, so it'll live beyond me.
Yes.
Right?
Raising up our grandchildren and our children, and
it's a mindset we have to embrace.
Same with our businesses, to see it as a legacy instead of just something.
Yep.
Oh, it's mine and no one else's, and
No, 100%.
So good.
Yeah.
So Sam Walton created Walmart, but Walmart still exists.
Yeah.
Right. And now it may not be the same thing he created.
Yeah.
It's gonna evolve.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But the key is that he understood that, and he established it so that it would exist for his legacy long beyond him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we establish Jesus' legacy in our lives, that's the hope, that it
Yes.
will continue to build the kingdom beyond us.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about us.
It's not about us. You know, it's really a daily thing about dying to the flesh and allowing the Holy Spirit to operate in our lives, because I believe if we don't do that, we will always be operating that orphan mindset. It has to be that the Holy Spirit in us, the death is the same way. We have the Spirit in us that we can die and resurrect and live as Christ did. But on our own, we can't do it.
No.
I mean, I will always go to self-promotion. I
Yeah,
will
by
always
default.
go to, by default, by self-protection. And if I'm under stress, that's what I'm going to do.
Yep, you're calling it the orphan mindset, and to me, it's human nature. Call it
Yes.
self-protection.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we don't follow God's order, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
God's order is I am love. God is love, number one, right?
Yeah.
But man always thinks about, well, I got to have food, water, shelter. I think of survival first, and then
Mm-hmm. Yes.
oh, by the way, when I have all that taken care of, now I have time for God, and now I'll seek
Yeah.
God. You know, and what connects me to God? His love.
Yes.
And so his first thing is what allows me to finally connect and then realize that, oh my gosh, if I'd have had that to begin with, all this
Yes.
other stuff is provided.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly.
So let's go on to New
Yep.
Testament. All
All
right.
right.
We're in Acts 18, verses 1 through 22. And you know, Paul has left on verse 18 or verse 1 of 18, Acts 18. Then Paul left Athens and he went to Corinth. There he became acquainted with a Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, who had recently arrived from Italy with his wife Priscilla. There's a key point here. They had left Italy when Claudius Caesar deported all Jews from Rome.
Yeah.
Verse 3, Paul lived and worked with them, for they were tent makers just as he was.
Yeah, they had the same
Profession.
same profession, which
And-
created that community of relationship with
And
them.
it was good because it probably strengthened their relationship, like you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
But there's another key point in all of this, too, is that, you know, even though Paul had a calling to preach the gospel and provide that, he also had to provide for his own self.
Yeah.
He had to work to provide provisioning.
Yeah.
So it kind of clarifies this as we get into it, because he had to work, think of it this way, work throughout the week, but then on the weekends, i.e., you know, the Sabbaths,
Yeah.
then he's in the temple, right?
Yep.
So Acts 18:14, each Sabbath found Paul at the synagogue.
Yes.
You know, so he's working through the week making tents, and then literally he's at the synagogue
Preaching
trying
the
to
word.
convince the Jews and Greeks alike. And after Silas and Timothy came down from Macedonia, Paul spent all of his time preaching the word. So now he had other people come and join him, and he has the provisioning to be able to full-time preach for a period of time. And I think that's a good word for a lot of young ministers, because there's a lot of young ministers that found a church, and I got 8 people in the church, and all of a sudden they feel like the church should be carrying them.
Yeah, should be
right?
providing for them.
Exactly.
And they
it's
should
kind
be
of like, well,
full-time.
it's a transition, right?
Yeah, it's a
and,
transition.
And there's 2 sides to that. Just like we talked about Judah and Israel and the 2 sides of the line, there's a line in our lives, and guess what? On one side, our calling, and on the
Yeah.
other side might be our profession.
Yeah, it's almost like those are trying to make it happen. You know, the timing. Everything's the right timing of God, and they're just making it happen.
And we see through this that, you know, Paul's constantly trying to reach out to the Jews, but we
Yeah.
also see that he can get rejected, right?
Yeah.
And so in verse 6, but when they opposed and insulted him, Paul shook the dust from his clothes and said, your blood is upon your own heads. I am innocent. For now I will go preach to the Gentiles. And this is exactly what Jesus told his disciples to do.
Yes.
To go out, spread the word. But if you're rejected,
Mm-hmm.
you know, don't beat them over the head and try to convince them and force them and argue with them. No, it's not on you. It's on them. So you have to let go. And I think there's a process here. I see in the Bible time and time again, systematic approach and process. If we look at it, there is a process in how we are to preach the gospel.
Yeah.
And I think we have to remind ourselves of that. Because
Yeah.
there's sometimes people don't want to let go. And it's like, no, there's a process. Stick to the process.
Well, I think just by reading some of this that Paul could be frustrated. He could have maybe some fear of, you know, what do I do next, God? This seems like this is, I mean, you know, if you're just feel like you're doing what God's asked you to do and it just seems like it's a flop, or is it, and then when you begin to question, did I hear God correctly? Am I, you know what I'm saying? And because, and this is why I think this, it says, because one night the Lord spoke to Paul, it's in verse 9.
Yep.
Don't be afraid, speak out, and don't be silent. Now, this is just me, but I don't think that would have been spoken to Paul if he wasn't afraid.
No, 100%.
So I believe he was afraid.
Yes.
I
in
mean,
fact,
he was questioning.
So in 1 Corinthians 2:3,
Yeah.
that's where Paul's writing back to the Corinthians, and he's reminding them about when he first engaged with them. And guess what it says? I was with you in weakness, in fear, and in much trembling. Right? And so he's admitting after the fact that, yeah, he was fearful.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when you first read about Paul, basically every Sabbath he's preaching in the synagogue. Doesn't sound like he's fearful. But you know it's wearing on him.
Well, right here it says your blood's on your own heads. I mean, I bet you he's probably screaming it. I mean,
So
it may not be.
He's frustrated.
I mean,
Yep.
I'm thinking of my personality. I'm yelling. I'm thinking your blood's on your own head. You know what I mean? And so
You're not pointing though.
not pointing, but probably yelling. So I think about this when we're in denial. If he had just, I believe he went to God about his fear.
Oh, 100%.
And
he did. I mean, and he had to be listening. He's
yeah.
listening to hear this.
Yeah.
So if he's hearing God, he's listening.
Yeah, he kind of brings it to the light. Man, I am scared. These guys are. I mean, am I?
But it's a key point because
Yeah.
I think not only is he in fear, and God tells him, "Don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Speak out. Don't be silent. For I am with you, and no one will attack you and harm you. For
Yeah.
many people in this city belong to me." So he's encouraging, he's empowering Paul, but he's also encouraging Paul to stay on course, right? So
Yeah.
Paul stayed there for the next year and a half teaching the word of God. But, Paul is called before the leadership, the Roman leadership, right?
Well, one more thing before we move on.
Go ahead.
Is back at his emotions again of being afraid. And this is one of the things
You want to
that-
stick with those emotions, don't you?
I do. I do. So the one I'm thinking about, and this is one that I struggle with, and I noticed that he struggled with it too. For I am with you, no one will attack you. I believe that Paul felt like he was by himself. Have you ever been in a group of people and you felt alone? Or if you've been in the midst of something and felt like you were the only one that had to make the decisions, whether it's a husband and wife, whether it's a job, sometimes we can get this, and it's a lie, that we're alone.
Well,
we're going to have to
especially-
make this decision on our own. We're going to have to figure this out. We're
Now-
going to have to grab,
And especially as a leader, because now remember, he's got people there with him,
Yeah.
right? Believers, even Timothy. So you got to think, Elizabeth, you ever feel like you're a leader amongst a bunch of people, and even though around you, you feel alone?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So many times that's how the leader may feel.
Yeah, and I feel
even
like
more
that's-
than others.
Yeah,
Right?
so I really felt like that's a place when Paul talked about his weakness. If he would have just hid that and not ever said anything and not spoke it out to God, and I think sometimes that's
Or
what we do.
dwelled on it. And
Right,
guess
and-
what?
or
That
dwelled
just leaves
on
that
it.
door wide open for the enemy to
Yeah.
have that influence on you.
Yeah, we
right?
walk around sometimes with the mask, and I'm not that way. We think we're all about that, but anyway, go ahead.
All about that. So I'm jumping to verse 13. Then they accused Paul of persuading people to worship God in ways that are contrary to the law. So these are the Jewish leaders, right, from the synagogue. Now all of a sudden, some of them are accusing Paul, and they bring him basically before Gallio, right, the Roman leader. So to me, this mirrors in a way, reflects a lot of like Jesus being brought before Pontius Pilate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
and,
it is.
And Jesus being brought before Pontius Pilate, Jesus didn't defend himself because he had to set in the situation that he knew he was there to be called for, right?
Right.
Now, Paul has been told by God that I'm going to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul's like, okay, now I'm getting brought up before, basically this judge, this Roman judge, or the governor. What am I, so he prepares to defend himself,
Mm-hmm.
right? But as Paul started to make his defense, Gallio turned to Paul's accusers and said, "Listen, you Jews, if there were a cause involving some wrongdoing or a serious crime, I would have a reason to accept your case. But since it is merely a question of words and names, name calling, think of this, what's going on in this world today, and your Jewish law, take care of it yourselves. I refuse to judge such matters." And he threw them out of his courthouse.
I love that.
And to me, again, it reflects Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate couldn't find any wrongdoing in Jesus, and he felt like this is.
Oh, yeah, I don't
But
wanna-
he
I
felt
don't get my
compelled that he
hands-
has to follow the Roman process, right? And crucify Jesus because that's what the religious leaders wanted to satisfy the people. Once again, the leader or the political leader was trying to satisfy the public.
Oh, yeah.
Right. In this case, the political leader is like, no, this is not right. There's no wrongdoing here. So out of my courthouse.
Yeah.
So it's interesting the flip of how the change is,
Yeah.
right?
And Paul didn't have to defend himself.
He didn't.
He didn't
Never had to.
Yeah, never had to.
Right. And in the end, even the Jewish crowd turned on the religious leaders.
Yeah.
Right. So then, and they flogged him in a sense right there in the court. So God came through for Paul. Right.
Yeah.
He was there all along. And he had prepared Paul that this kind of event could happen, but not to worry.
Yeah.
And that he was there for him, and he showed up. And he was really there for Jesus as well. It's just a different purpose, a different mission. Jesus was on a different calling, and had to fulfill what he went through.
Yeah.
But
So
Paul
good.
was protected.
Yeah.
Right?
So good.
Anything else from the New Testament?
No, I mean, on verse 18, I think it's interesting about Paul. He stayed in Corinth for a time. And then he says, then he shaved his head according to the Jewish custom.
Again, process.
You know, but I mean, I think about it, you know, sometimes we are, I don't know how to put it, but sometimes we don't want to do, I don't believe that way. I'm not going to do that.
Yes.
When we need to do that just to reach them.
Yes.
We can't get past our own, I don't believe that, instead of wanting to reach that heart
That's right.
that has their head shaved. And you know, we'll be so offended by the head shavers
Yeah.
that we can't reach them. And I thought, Paul thought, you know, I'm going to shave my head, the Jewish customs, and he'd already yelled, shook the dust from his clothes at the Jewish people. Well, here, I think something happened. I believe something happened with Paul, with Jesus. He had some new revelation. But I think about that sometimes when God calls us to minister to all, to love everyone.
Yes.
And we can't get past somebody's tradition
Yes.
or the
Right.
way they believe
Good
to
stuff.
reach them.
Good stuff.
And I'm so
Well, and we have to be careful, I think, how we deal with this. My wife and I, we had a Bible study in our house for about 9 years, and we had a challenge because we had all the people in the Bible study, we love them all.
Yeah.
But we had a new couple that came in, and he was actually a Marine that was getting out of the military, and so I kind of shepherded him and help him do the transition into civilian life, get a good civilian job, and so they were coming to our Bible study, and they just happened to be Catholic. But I was raised Lutheran, and so I kind of understand the Catholic religious process and principles. But we're in our Bible study, and then one of the older couples in our Bible study, you know, they started talking one day, and they said, "But those Catholics." And it was the last day that those two people came to our Bible study.
Yeah.
But what was amazing was we still had a connection with them because within a week or two, they started a Bible study in their house, and they invited us to come to their Bible study.
Yay.
And what was amazing about it was, you know, these are Catholics. So we go to this Catholic Bible study, and they had two priests, Catholic priests, that had came into town to help them set up and conduct their Bible study. And guess what? They were Spirit-filled priests,
Wow.
praying in the Spirit.
Wow.
And so, and I didn't even realize or know at the time really that there were Catholics formally that way operating. I mean, I knew there were Spirit-filled Catholics and Spirit-filled Baptists, and that's why we got to be careful about those Baptists, terms like that, because we start labeling and start isolating. And Paul had some Jews that were believing; he was converting some Jews, but he had some that were staunchly stuck in their religion that he couldn't convert, and so he had to know which, you know, had to work.
Yes,
But it's
yeah.
about not closing all doors, right?
Exactly.
Amen.
If God calls you to and you know that God's leading you or that unction to go to a group and they want you to wear a certain hat, you wear the certain hat.
Play along. I mean,
And a lot of people, well, you're compromising. No, I'm not compromising. I didn't compromise.
well, it's a
who I am.
superficial thing
Yeah.
that you're willing to give a little ground on because you don't.
Yeah.
It's not changing how you believe,
Exactly.
right?
exactly.
And I think that's the difference. Now, if I start following that to the point that it changes
Oh.
how I believe and how my
Absolutely.
relationship with God is going to operate, a whole different animal.
Right. Yeah, where we're grounded, where we're influenced is a big deal.
But many times it's opening that door, like you say, if I needed to shave my head. And look at it, let's think of it this way. Cancer. How many cancer people go through cancer treatment?
Yeah.
They lose their hair and their friends encourage them by shaving their heads. I'll go through it too. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
very similar, to me, a very
Yes.
similar process. It doesn't mean that I'm changing everything, it's okay, we're
Yeah.
just gonna show a little bit of support so we can connect, and through that relationship,
Yeah.
we can come out the other side together in a better state.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
So good, so good.
Good stuff.
Okay, well, let's move on to Psalms 145, verses 1 through 21, and we don't have a lot of time, so we'll jump on a couple of things here. One of the first things is in verse 1, it says, I will exalt you, my God and King, and praise your name forever and ever. And that word exalt means to raise high. So let's think about this. If we take God and our perception and in the way we engage with God, and we think about raising him, making him bigger, then in reality, we're stepping back and perceiving that reality, just like that separation of, a car wreck from catastrophe, from, building the
Right.
business around ourselves.
Yes.
We separate ourselves, right? Well, in that, we see God for what he really is, the
Yeah.
creator of the entire universe. And guess what? It's going to make your problems, which right now are dominating your life,
Yeah.
they're going to seem so small.
Yeah.
So as we exalt God, our problems get smaller.
Yes, I think that's what I've seen in this too. It's like David began to be pray. He was begin to praise him, begin to exalt him, and it brought him into a place of meditation. Because in verse 5 it says, "I will meditate on your majesty," to bring him into that place of just
Peace.
and to meditate
Connection,
on who
relationship.
he really was. But I believe through that praise and worship, it moved everything out of the way, the stuff that was going on, so that he could meditate on who God truly was. And then he began to speak. He said, they will speak. So then he began to declare God's promises. And I think sometimes that's where, when we're actually in worship, and if we're having a bad day or a bad morning, whatever, we'll just even do this.
Yep.
It'll bring us into that place of just being seeing God who he is.
So again, we're seeing process.
Right.
We're seeing a methodology that if we can adapt into our lives, we can see the same kind of results, right? And in verse 4, there's another piece of this. Let each generation tell its children of your mighty acts. Let them proclaim your power.
Yeah.
Now, this was how information was conveyed back in that age, but it's still the same.
Yes.
That we need to be supporting each generation. So many times when I'm teaching, I'll have literally people in their 80s that it's like, okay, we're talking about these things, and it's kind of like, well, I'm done. No, you're not. You're still here.
Yeah.
Right? And you still have influence. And maybe it's your children, maybe it's your grandchildren, maybe it's your great-grandchildren.
Yes.
But the key is let each generation. So we need to be telling our children and grandchildren, influencing those that we can generationally, just like that separation from that business again, right?
Yes.
Because now we're leaving that legacy with them.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how we're taught to preach the gospel.
Yeah.
This is how we're supposed to be doing it, right?
So Tuesday morning, we on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays we have a business meeting with Elizabeth and the other workers, and it was Tuesday morning. And normally I would watch my grandsons on Tuesday, and normally I would go upstairs so it'd be quiet, but I didn't. I stayed in the kitchen, and Easton, the youngest, he's 10. He was very attentive. He says, "Nana, I'll turn down my cartoons." And he was listening everything that was said. I knew there was a transaction happening. It was something, I'm thinking, oh God. So I'm going to make a point not to separate.
No, exactly, 100%. And you and to be honest with you, we don't always know when they're listening.
I know. This one was like, I mean, it was so apparent. It's like, oh my God. And that's the reason I asked Elizabeth now, Harley, and I can't think of. I intentionally asked, well, now how old are they? Remember me asking that? And then you said their ages. So, because I wanted Easton to relate to their age, because I knew he was attentively listening. So, I'm sorry, I had to throw
No,
that
it's
story.
good.
It
That's
was like,
And it's a key point. So I've been teaching in this Bible study this Bible college, their business school for this will be my 16th year. And I've been asking God for 3 or 4 years, Lord, am I done? Is it time? Am I released? And I keep getting pulled back that no, I'm not. And so, okay, so I keep teaching. But there's times like I feel like there's a class of 35 students here and I teach and I feel like there ain't nobody getting nothing. You know what I'm saying? I feel like, we're going nowhere, right? I feel like I'm paddling, Lord, but we ain't going nowhere. And then invariably, every time I start to feel that way, and that's just the enemy, right?
Yeah, it is.
Trying to convince you just
That
to
you're
quit.
alone.
And every time I do that, invariably, a student will catch me in the hall or whatever and say, you know what? And this has happened every single year. A student will come to me and say, I was ready to quit. I was going to leave Bible college next week. But you showed me that I'm still learning and there's more for me to stay.
Oh, wow.
And so I can't wait till you get here in 2 weeks and start teaching again. And it's like, thank you, Lord. And they feel like that, I've saved them. It's like, no, you've saved me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, and that's what it is. That's what keeps me coming back. And that's how I know, no, the Lord's showing me that I'm still needed. I'm still here.
That's what I said. Those are encounters.
I'm fulfilling my calling.
Yes.
Right? And so again, I'm working on the side, again, like Paul, but in the same sense, I'm fulfilling my calling where I can.
Your purpose. And sometimes we can get a little discouraged in our
big
purpose.
time.
And then God brings us those little kisses. I call them kisses because, I'm talking about the emotional things about things.
Again, you're going to the emotional side.
Think about the process of the emotional thing. God just gave you a kiss, but anyway.
Okay. One last point I want to make on that when I was talking about verse 4 when it says, let the generation tell their children and the mighty acts, let them proclaim your power.
Yeah.
That is both a directive and a prophecy.
Yeah.
And we're to fulfill that prophecy. I think that's something to take with us as we go forward.
I agree, yeah. So
All right.
good. So good.
So good.
Well, we finished?
If we're done, I don't know. Are we done?
I think, Proverbs 18:1, unfriendly people care only about themselves with us. What else can you say about that? They lash out at common sense.
Well, I'll tell you, the King James and the New King James, they translate that unfriendly people to be a man who isolates himself.
Oh,
and so let's think about this.
Good.
When you isolate yourself, now this is why, I like to compare. I like to be careful of just reading just the New Living
Corey.
or just the Amplified. You have to go back every now and then and compare because sometimes words mean things and you want to make sure you really clarify.
I like that.
But when a man
let me read
isolates,
your notes. I like this.
so
we were
when a man isolates himself, right? Guess what? When you're isolated, that's when the enemy can tell you, "Oh, you ought to quit. Oh, nobody's listening. Oh, you're wasting your time," right?
Yeah.
And you dwell on that now, and all that does is it isolates. Think about it, you're
I can
isolating a
protect
sheep.
myself.
So that sheep is now vulnerable to the wolf.
Yeah.
Right? But when that sheep is part of the flock, all of a sudden the enemy loses his influence.
Yeah.
Right? And so we strengthen ourselves in community.
Yeah.
We strengthen ourselves being part of the flock, right?
Yes.
And that links to Proverbs 13:10 because pride leads to conflict. Those who take advice are wise.
Yeah.
When you're isolated, you can't get advice from anybody.
No. And
When you're in community, you can hear, receive, and now receive wisdom, receive advice.
And all
right?
we would see is that they're unfriendly people. We don't actually see that they're operating in a place of isolation,
Right.
self-protracting, trying to protect from themselves. Sometimes I think we need to step back a little bit every now and then and not judge and say, God, what do you say about this unfriendly person?
Yes.
Maybe they're in your life
You know
every
what?
day.
Maybe you need to shave your head.
Maybe I do.
Just saying.
Oh no.
Okay, you can see we're having a lot of fun, and it should be. We should be able to have some fun
Yeah.
and enjoy
Yes.
and see and help each other connect and see through all of this,
Yeah.
and hopefully take with us a little bit. And hopefully you're enjoying some of this as
Yeah.
much as we are.
Yeah.
So,
Y'all have a blessed Friday, and we'll be back tomorrow, Saturday morning.
well,
Again,
we won't be.
We won't be. We're gonna pawn it off on somebody else. But as far as the power.